I came, I saw, I conquered.
I'm going to ask you a challenging question. Which one of these 3 orange pencils do you think will actually be the best to color in a collector road? Might be an easy question. You think, well, they're all the same. Well, actually, they are not. And if you think that is difficult with orange, try the multitudes of different green colors that you can pick up at your stationery or office workshops. It will blow your mind. And how do you know which one to use without ruining your map? Because you are not going to be able to use an eraser to rub out pencil easily. So the thing that I want to teach you is that tools behave differently depending on which tool you use. Whether you use it for 20 minutes, 2 hours, or 20 hours, that tool will change. Pencils run out, and buying the exact same one can be difficult because, say this one here, this came in a set of 24. Do I really want to have to buy all 24 again just to buy this one pencil? And green is going to run out much faster on your map than, say, a brown, because green will do your parks. So here I am using a 0.5 millimeter pigment liner, and we're going to draw a collector road. We're going to draw 3 of them, and we're using fairly good quality paper here. This is a foam board, and it costs $6. So even the quality of paper that you use will make a difference. So I've drawn 3 collector roads there. I'm also just going to grab a piece of standard paper that you would find. This is only about a 60 GSM, and we're also going to draw 3 collectors on here as well. You can see the difference in pressing it down, that on the foam board, it goes in a lot deeper into the paper. So here's 3 collector roads. This is also using 0.5. That's if you're choosing to do a very thick map. Now in there, you're not going to write a street name with the 0.5. So let's call this John Street. Look how thick it looks. So we definitely are going to use a 0.5. Let's go down one. So now this one is a 0.3 millimeter. It's all about finding the perfect match of line weight between your different pens. I like these because they don't do ink bleeds. If you've ever seen an ink bleed before, and the cheaper the pen, this is a 1-cent pen from Target, and you can see it bleeding on the edges already there, and not doing great line weight or heavy line weights. So that can be a huge challenge in buying your pens. If you're on a budget, not much you can do. You can also use a ruler, but I feel that lines are expressive. Look how expressive this curve is here. But curves can also be dangerous, that if you don't do them properly, they don't look real. Like this sort of curve here. See that around that bend there? And see the ink bleed? Terrible, this 1-cent pen. That bleed is shameful. And we're going to do one more John Street, and we're going to do it at a 0.1 millimeter. In the comments, tell me which pen you think gives the best line weight. Number 1, number 2, number 3. So let's go back to our 3 colors here. Now, this orange is a Staedtler, and we're going to color this John Street in. Can you see already that it's leaving a lot pencil shavings on your map, which you need to be careful that you push off your map so that it doesn't smudge onto other areas. Now we move on to the cheapest option, which is a tricolor. This is about 20 cents. Maybe you can get it in a pack for $3. Already, did you hear the snap after sharpening? Now this is classed as the same orange. It was the only orange in the pack. So it's very light. It's much like a pastel color. So these are the only 3 oranges I have, and I have hundreds of pencils in my collection. So I'm not a fan of that one, number 2. Now this is number 3, which is a watercolor. It is quite expensive. And this, you'd think this would be the best one because it's the most expensive, but it looks terrible. So which one do you think is better? Now, the issue there may be is that I prefer writing my streets in 0.01. Sometimes I prefer writing them in smaller, 0.05. So let's, especially if you're doing small line weights, so let's call this John Street, and let's put a traffic light in there. Red lights, traffic lights. And let's use the expensive number 3 orange along here, and let's see what it does to our map. It makes the readability difficult, and that is one of the huge things you need to consider, because what you're doing when you're drawing a map is you're drawing information. You're drawing an information system for the reader to interpret data. So, terrible. Very difficult to see the red traffic lights and kind of smudging along, and makes it difficult to see the John Street. And let's use the cheapest pencil. And I think it's the winner. Gives a nice pastel color. It's not too deep, doesn't cover the writing nor the traffic light. So this is what you'd call a soft pencil, and this one is what you call a hard pencil. As soon as you get all your colors when you do your maps, you need to sort your pencils into hard and to soft. Soft, hard, extremely hard. I prefer to throw the very hard out and work with these two pencils. Depending on what you're doing, you're not going to have your two collectors having two different oranges, so you need to ensure that your readability is not about aesthetics. People need to read the street. I don't feel you can read that. So avoid color stacking. You need to choose one for your collectors. But that doesn't mean that, say, off this street here, you choose to have a school. And on your legend, you choose your schools on your legend, so education, to be colored in that softer orange. So it's not color stacking if it is for two different facilities or objects on your match. So that actually looks reasonable together, but you wouldn't stack the same color together, so two hard colors. So if I then wanted to do, say I chose to do a hard color for a hospital, and I chose medical to be the middle orange, you can see now that the colors are going to clash. So color stacking is not a good thing. If viewers can't read the city and read the information, then your system has failed. So we need to be careful of that. So we're looking at different paper now. So for this, we are going to use a 0.1 uni pen, which is cheaper than these pens. These pens are about $7 Australian or $3.50 US. These are much cheaper at half the price, but they do the job just as well. John Street. Let's go on Main Street. And let's go America Street. I feel that these write quite well for what are collectors. And the writing is in a 0.1 millimeter. Now have a look at the paper quality. So this is the middle one from the soft up there. And this is using a very cheap piece of paper. So if your intention is to draw your map for information, for readability, and for aesthetics, you really need to get some quality paper. And then on the top of John Street, and you might not easily be able to see the difference, but you can certainly feel it and hear it. And then this is the hardest orange. So let me know which one you think is better, which paper to draw on. So I'm going to get out 3 pens here. We have a 0.1, a 0.05, and a 0.03. These are the pens that you are going to use to do construction. Pens are for construction. Pencils that you color in with are for zoning. and for natural features. You may be wondering, well, what's the difference between these three and why do I need three if I want to make a map that is all about having correct information systems? And it's to do with line weight. You can actually go slightly above this to have a few more, and I'll explain why in a second. You'll also need a 0.3, and you'll need some reds as well. You'll need a 0.2 red, and surprisingly, a very high 0.5 red as well. And we'll explain why. So for your motorways, which are probably the biggest thing in the city, you're going to need to go with 0.1. So we're just going to draw a long road, bypass over it, and notice the distance between the parallel lines is thicker and wider because I am drawing a motorway. And we'll also use this one to draw a body of water going along and up. And we'll draw the motorway having a ramp and access. Very quick drawing. Now, this is for major roads. So let's imagine that this is a causeway or an expressway, and it's coming across the map. 0.05 is for collectors and smaller roads. And you can see the line weight change. Very difficult when you have to go back over the pen when it didn't function properly. And that's because this pen, based on the nib, is in its 15th hour, I would say, somewhere between 15 and 20 hours, meaning that it is starting to decay and I need to buy a new one. So now we move on to our smallest one. And what am I going to do with the small one? Laneways. So I'm going to do tiny laneways in this section and connect it back up with the correct 0.05. You can also use the 0.3 to do foot trails that come along the garden. The 0.03 is perfect for your labeling, especially on your laneways when you need to write small. But for your motorway, you're going to use your 0.1. So when would you use the 0.3? You would use this if you're doing massive water features and you wanted to make them prominent. So let's go over our river and our lake. And you can see that it's add a depth of character to our map with a different line weight. And it's about the only time that you would use a 0.3 on your map. John Bird River. And we could say that this is a river that travels across the whole state, hence why it's so prominent. We've got various blues. Blues are challenging, especially when doing water. You don't want to sink your river and have the John Bird not legible. So I don't recommend using dark blues. I also don't recommend using pastel blues. You could barely see this pastel blue. We are lucky enough with a pastel blue that we can rub it out to a certain extent, but using a hard blue, it is much harder. I recommend using a hard sky blue for water, and you'll see that it flows nicely onto the page. But as I will show you, it is diabolical to rub out. The only way you're going over that is with a harder blue, and it looks poor now. So before you even start a city or start a map, you need to get your pencils in order and make a color guide like I have here. And next to the blue for river, which is this one, you can see that this is the C30. So I know it's this pencil and not this pencil or not this blue. So that way you're not color stacking on your map by accident. If this blue runs out, like this green is getting close to running out, you need to find one equivalent. And that is why I have so many greens, because it was trial and error to try and find this exact green C50 without going to have to buy the whole 24 watercolors again, which were $50. You can buy various pencils that are standalone, like this one. And you can try and color match. These two are not correct. This one's way off. I strongly recommending doing what I'm doing and using this down till it's there and hoping that you've finished off all of your city and map in that time, or more of your pencils have succumbed to their end and you have to buy the whole watercolor again. So color matching is very, very difficult. And it's almost kind of why I've stopped using watercolor pencil packets like this, where you're reliant on buying every single pencil just to get the one that you need. Whereas brands like Just Art, Born, you can actually buy these colors individually at most stationery shops. So I'm switching over to doing that method. So we'll finish coloring in Bird River. Interesting technique that you've probably been taught in art school or art class is smudging the blue in with your finger. And you'll know it's smudging because you'll have blue on your fingertip. We will at the video address why I wear gloves and why you should be wearing gloves as well. So you'll find out soon about that. Now, one of the hardest colors is reds. These are the worst because they are a hard color by nature. And as you will see with my various reds, even the pastel reds, they don't suit maps so well for big items. So I don't recommend using those. But for our motorway, this is the reason why I cut the motorway off with the writing and don't go over the top of it. Because when you write motorway in the 0.3 and in the standard 0.1 and do the red over the top, the readability is lost. That is why it is best to cordon it off into its own writing to make the readability on your map work more efficiently for the viewer or for the reader. So along here we are going to do a museum and just drawing the outline of the building, and we'll call this an art museum. We're doing this in the 0.1 because it's a large structure, moving over to the 0.03 to draw the path network that you can access the museum through the grasslands, including the underpass through the motorway. And then also writing path in the 0.03. But moving over to the 0.05 to do the parking logos of where you can park. Now you may think, why swap? Well, you don't want your parking to be too heavy. Look at that. See how heavy it is? It takes away from the art museum and draws you into that parking lot, which is not what you want. You want to be drawn into the art museum. So for smaller things, like the playground over here, we're doing 0.03. Playground and a picnic area. We may draw here a football academy and connect it via path. So we've got like a park sporting ground. In the 0.01, that is where you'll come write the park name. So when you write it across, Queen Parklands. Coloring this in green is difficult. I'm going to color it the north and the south in the two greens that are the most viable, because you really want the grassy looking green. In fact, we'll go 3 greens because this is a hard green. You would not use that. So there are the 3 greens, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to divide the sections. So 1, 2, 3 on this side, and let me know which one you think is the best. And we'll call this one Davson Reserve. And we will draw a cricket oval on this side. With the road coming around. Yes, you are going to need a traffic light here for the cars, especially if it's a large cricket oval that's used a lot for people to come into the parking lots. And moving to the 0.05 to do the P in the parking lot. So, number 1, very difficult to use this pencil because it is definitely in its 20th hour, due for replacement. And that's what we we're talking about earlier, is about how your pen or your pencil works and behaves throughout its lifespan. Pens will bleed, its nibs will become blunt, pencils will become shorter. So our parkland is looking good, and you can draw in concentric circles with these statelier, heavier ones, rather than doing thick lines, so it looks like it's grass. So that's number one. Number two is our cheap one, the 30 cents, and it is a pastel green. I just want to do a quick building down here, something small. Now, I did that in the wrong pen. What do? I need to get out the 0.05, and it's lucky because that was the one down, and go over the top of it. It doesn't add too much line weight to it compared to the other one. And we will call this a youth club YC. And go to 0.03 to join up the path. So the pastel. It's like an emerald green, and already I am not liking it. You tell me. It's got a weird readability to it. It doesn't draw you in. It almost makes you want to look away. And it was quick to complete, which tells you something. So now we're moving over to the heaviest green that I have, an emerald green by Bourne, super heavy pencil. Because you can tell it's heavy because it's already discharging particles onto your paper that you need to brush off. Larger areas or scale on your map are easier to color in, but you still need to put as much effort into your concentric circles to make it shade on top. Because if you don't do concentric circles, this is what you end up with. Lots of particles on your page if you're doing lines, and you can see the lines where it meets through here. So the concentric circles going back over where you were is the best way to improve your readability. Now remember, don't color everything. We're not going to color this cricket oval, even though it obvious is the cricket oval is green. But for that readability, because we want to draw the reader into that's where the cricket field is, the prominent cricket field in town, we need to not color it in to draw the readability to that. Let's quickly move the river up a bit more. Now, paper is interesting. It can be thick and it can be thin. Paper can warp. This warps. See, it bounces. Even though this is $6, it is still not good. And I want you to think of paper being your vacant land. You don't need to have everything colored. We could have this section here be absolutely nothing because it is someone's property that hasn't been claimed by anything. It is just their property. You're not going to say this is John Adams' house, so we leave it blank. So that is not ours to color in. If it is a commercial farm that produces milk for the city, yes, you could write it in. So maybe this one. Milk and Co. Dairy. And its entrance should be somewhere near the main road, not here. So it's probably not a really good place to do a dairy, actually. But we'll do it down here as its entry. And it's probably better to do 2 points to this road here. And traffic lights. Traffic lights. Now, industry, business parks, industrial are a black. Farms are purple. But we're going to say that this is the industry side, the factory, where the milk is put into cartons. Black is easier to read for construction. It's the easiest, and it's the one you should be using. But it is the hardest to read for zoning. Now I'm going to write park underneath this in the different 0.5, 0.3 along each corner of this intersection. Our sticker 1 and our standard 0.1, and just watch what black does to them. The only way you're reading that park is the white that's left around the indentation of the word park. Slightly readable on that one, but you're using a massive scale difference and line weighting. And on our standard one, it's just readable. So to combat using black, you don't go over the writing. It is the only way around it. And it nice, adds a nice creative touch to your maps. And then do the black around the writing. Or the alternative way is with black is to draw the building of the industry. So say this is the building for Amazon warehouse. So you write it inside the actual building and not in the vacant property. And then you color the black zoning, the industry zoning in black. Now you may be asking, why don't I use yellow for zoning? Because it seems quite standard in City Skylines, SimCity, to use yellow. That's where color stacking becomes an issue. Because the problem is, there are a few things with yellow that would clash, and that is the fact that arterial roads, your major roads, are also in yellow. Look how small my yellow is. So let's say that this road is an arterial road, it comes around there and keeps going. As we color in this industry section here was going to be in yellow, it bleeds into the arterial road. And then you go, yuck, you have to try and rub it out. Let's erase that terribly, but because it's black, we should be able to go back over it. So don't make that mistake of color stacking roads with the same color as your zoning. See, look how horrible that looks now. So the question of why do I do everything in freehand and don't use rulers? Yes, your city would probably look better in freehand, drawing your grids, painstakingly long, moving the ruler around constantly, checking the line weights, not having them perfectly match up all the time like that. But by doing your map freehand, it creates great curves. It also forces you to make adaptations when you make mistakes, not restarts, like chucking it out. So let's make a mistake with a pen deliberately. So let's say off here, I accidentally make my road go like that because my pen slips and I go like that. You're like, oh crap, what do I do with this huge intersection here? You could either extend this road out here and change the road to go that direction, and then force this into a park. What if you're drawing your road like this, and then all of a sudden you go in like this? You may think you're very, very, very screwed, but there are some solutions to that. The best solution to solving this is to close the road back up here and color this in black through here, and maybe even extend it around like this. Try and get it equally weighed up. Have a road come off here, and we'll turn this into a one-way street or a cycleway, and then just put arrows along the street. So mistakes force adaptations, not restarting. If I erase mistakes, so we've now made a history to this, that yes, this road used to be 2 lanes going both ways, but they closed it and they made a plaza along here, a walking boulevard. And then either side, we could do like restaurants and a brewery. We could do a theme park or a shopping center or a mall, of a variety of things that would then make this area more walkable, developing the city's history. Now, there was one huge line weight that we haven't looked at yet, and that's the 0.5 red, which is really heavy. Never draw any lines on your city with 0.5. This is for your suburb names. Over the top, we write our suburb name just right over everything. Right over every bit of writing. It does not care what's below. Bird Town, and that makes it legible and readable. So one of the things we need to quickly look at is paper fraying. And that's when you draw off the edge, you can hear it snap. And depending on the type of paper you use, depends on how much snapback you get. And the problem can not be so much the expensive paper, but the cheaper paper. Here, the snapback, the louder the snapback, the more you can tear up the page, and this can fold up. But it comes to the coloring or your zoning that becomes the issue, that you need to push that way on the paper, because if you come this way, I've just torn up the paper, which seems quite obvious, but you can make many mistakes when you're quickly trying to color. So adjusting how you zone on your map will depend on what paper you have, and it is much easier on the cheaper paper to do so, because you can do it near the edge, and the best way to do it is to grab another cheap piece of paper and go underneath it and just color onto the next bit of paper, keeping your lines smooth. And then, so you can't do concentric circles on the edge, you're ripping up the paper. Then starting your concentric circles near the end and then moving in. Just want to quickly show you all the different types of tools that you need, from your watercolors to your pens, your sharpeners, a shaving box. You may even have highlighters that you trial, but it's also important to trial various different packs. I've tried these neon ones here, which were terrible. These pastel ones here, which were even worse. These aqua ones, which were standard but okay, but I strongly recommend the watercolor ones here for your hard colors, and for your soft colors, Faber-Castell. For your pens, I recommend the Uni pen for your 0.03 and for most of your smaller line weights. But for your larger ones, I recommend Staedtler pencils and pigment liners. And don't be afraid to try various different pieces of paper. So the final question to ask is, why do I use gloves? Different types of gloves too. These gloves stop this section of your hand from sweating onto your page, smudging as well. Wool ones are great because if it's cold, your lines are going to go like this if you're cold with your hand in the shaking. So putting on the long sleeve one is a challenge. It comes all the way up to the top of your arm, kind of like a sports glove, and there is a vital purpose for doing this if you really want to do professional maps. It still gives you your two vital fingers free, your gripping fingers and thumb. And this is what it allows you to do the most. It allows you to place your whole arm on your map without the sweat from here building up on your map and staining it. And it is very important for a section up on this side of your map that you need to color without rotating your map. See how my whole hand needs to be on the page? Many maps I've ruined with my body oil stains from not wearing long gloves. These gloves you can get quite cheaply on the line for about $4 if you look in the right places. Perfect. You don't need them on both hands. This hand can stay free with a smaller glove, and this one can stay with the larger one. This one, if you're very smart, might not even need a glove, and you just keep it off your whole page. So we've just learned all about pens, line weights, the scale problems, tools acting differently, the different types of paper. I hope this video has helped you make your decisions.